I am Shuhan Wang. I'm the moderator of today's session. Welcome, everyone. And please join me to welcome our distinguished panelists. The first one is Linda Cai. She's a talent development and also coaching, leadership coach. She was the VP for LinkedIn. And she's now doing a lot of consultation all over the world for talent development. It's a huge job. I really don't know what that means. We'll ask her later. And let me introduce all of you, and then we welcome you. And the second person here is Professor Zhongqi Shi, and he is the professor at Columbia University, the director of the Chinese language program at Columbia University. And recently, he's elected to be the president of Chinese Language Teacher Association, the other CLTA-USA. Yeah, congratulations. And our last but not the least speaker is Linda Egnatz. And she is the, as you know, heard her earlier, the president of the JNCL, Joint National Committee for Languages. And also she's the executive director of Global Seal of Biliteracy. And she was the 2014 ACFO Teacher of the Year. Welcome, everybody. Please join me. And thank you so much for coming to this session. After hearing everybody brief sort of introduction of yourself and why you're here, I think we'll modify a little bit of our questions and answers, but we'll keep everything there. But so what really happens is that in this global economy, we really have to think about the supply and demand issue, right? There's maybe somewhere there's a gap or overlap. We need to find out. And also we need to think about language learning and teaching, especially language learning from the learner's perspective. It's an investment. It's an investment of time, money, energy, everybody's effort, and all the pains and tears, right? So we really need to think about how do we talk about or even think about or even tell our learners how to think about language learning outcomes. We have been focusing too much on what students can do in Chinese, what cannot do. After 3 years, they still can't do this and that. 他们的汉字写得不好, their composition is not good, But we're not thinking about the output at the end and using the backward design approach and think about what should they be, what can they do, what should they be thinking about the purpose, the process and the outcomes of learning, not just for academic level and going to high school, going to college, admission and so forth, but really in the workforce. That's the ultimate goal, right? Not necessarily just work, but also living in this global economy. So we really need to expand our thinking in a much broader term. And I think our speakers this morning really has kind of expanded our thinking. And I think this is really exciting that today's program, at the NCLC, we're not just having educators coming talking to us. We have IT and AI and all the different industry people coming and telling us, talking about what they feel, they're thinking about languages. And now it's our turn to kind of think about how do we respond to that. So this session is on language certification, credentialing, and so forth. But really think broader, and I'm so happy to hear that we have preschooler, directors here, because backward design, how do you even tell the kids and their parents It's a long career, 15 years, right? So how can they think about the purpose of learning? And it's not just learning a language. That's too narrow. It really is the development of the whole person, especially the cognitive development side, right? And the emotional side. So that's why we're here, all right? So I have my passionate introduction. So can you kind of tell us a little bit more about your background and why this really matters to you? Linda, we start from you.
Okay. Thank you, Wang Laoshi. It's very hard to follow the energy and the passion. My Chinese name is Cai Jingfang. I was born and raised in Shanghai, China. Actually finished my degree in Fudan University. And then I started my international career, first stopped Singapore, then went to UK. And the last 11 years I've been here leading learning and talent development functions for large companies like Aon, 50,000 people, State Farm, and LinkedIn most recently. So I'm very passionate, similar to a lot of you, bilingual. My daughter is having negotiation with me every day about how much she's going to learn, because I fundamentally believe that to be a global citizen is important in tomorrow's world, and for her, language is a critical part of it. But then it struck me that at work, I still have to almost educate my business stakeholders on a daily basis why language education is important to future workforce. And I also realized that I'm one of the lone voices, in today's forum even. And when I talk to my chief learning officer peers, we are having similar conversation about future skills, human-centric skills, what's necessary, but we are not talking together. So for me, it's super exciting to be here, connecting the dots across higher ed, credentialing, certification agencies, and industry, so we can come together to talk about some common challenges and hopefully address the common goal, which is to make sure our future generation have the skills to thrive in tomorrow's AI and digital age.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Hello. Thank you very much. My name is Zhongqi Shi, Zhongqi. For the past 20 years, I have taught business Chinese to hundreds of students at Columbia and in China. Although I am not teaching them how to open or manage a business, I'm very proud to see them succeed in the workplace using the language, culture, and communication skills they have learned from my classes. I'm a strong supporter of bridging the gap between the classroom and the workplace, and why it's thrilled to be here on this panel. So I'll keep my introduction brief.
Hi, I'm also Linda, and I'm really excited to be here and to hear from so many of you that you're working with younger language learners. Language learning is something that takes time, especially when you're learning a language that has a character base that's different from the one that you've maybe learned in other school programs. And so my goal really is to think about what creates a long-time language learner. Like, how do we keep children in the programs long enough to be really successful in business and to go out into the workplace and have not just language competence, but cultural competence? And so what my work centers around is creating pathways to certification through the Seals of Biliteracy, through pathway awards, to recognize students and keep dangling that, sort of a prize and award and making it so that they get regular measurements of their success and their progress, and that when they leave your programs, they have a document certification of their language skills that they can then use in the workplace or for advanced placement or university credit.
That's really wonderful. And again, using the backward design thinking. So we will start with Linda, and we'll call you Jingfang if you don't mind, And Jingfang, we'll ask her, what does workforce want? When we talk about language skills, what do they want? How do we even envision, the kind of language skills and cultural competency? Particularly, there's hundreds, types of sort of discipline-specific knowledge and skills, right? So how do we unpack the thinking on that?
Yeah, thank you. So as you can imagine, in the business world, there have been numerous conversations right now happening about, hey, how do we train? What do we train? How do we invest in workforce development that's meaningful, sustainable? And language is very important to everyone sitting here, but it's one piece of 100 and 1,000 of other things that the business can spend money on. So it's really important for me and others to connect the dots for business about the benefit and business value of language education. So the way I talk to my business stakeholders, I say there are two primary ways language education can contribute to the kind of human-centric skills that we know in the future workforce will really need to focus on. And the second is the work environment. So let me tell you a little bit more. On the skill side, with all the AI adoption, a lot of the data analytics and processing, words processing type of roles are being very fast AI'd. You probably know Microsoft Copilot. There are a lot of AI-enabled features that are, by startups or big companies. So this critical conversation about, hey, now what do we train on that will differentiate the business to have competitive advantage? And it all comes down to creativity, problem solving, empathy, the ability to collaborate. So Wang Laoshi, what you said, the process of learning, it really resonated with me because we don't talk about all these like, it's a byproduct, but it's very valuable byproduct of language learning. And the second is work environment, because in corporate world, DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion continues to be a huge focus. A lot of my team's effort is teaching inclusive leadership skills, helping team to be collaborative, cohesive. And we know that speaking to another person's mother tongue is the best way to create that emotional connection. And I always say to my leader, language without human connection is just data, right? What AI juggling, they don't have emotions. They are just repeating stuff. So that's not what language education is about. So at the end of the day, when I can speak to what my CEOs care about, is a great environment where everyone feels belong, feels authentic, they can bring their whole self. I know when I speak Mandarin, I'm kind of different person, but if I can bring all myself to work and I feel like I can keep developing my human skills and not be a lesser AI, but a better human, that's what my CEO want and my generations of workers want.
Wow, that's well said. Not a lesser AI, but a better human. So speaking from that perspective on education, Zhongqi, tell us a little bit about the big picture of Chinese language field in the United States today.
Okay, thank you. Well, to put it bluntly, it's not looking too good. Let me break down this with some numbers. Last year, the Modern Language Association released its latest foreign language census, which can give us the whole picture of the foreign language enrollments in the US at college level. The report says, compared to 2016, the enrollments in languages other than English dropped by 16%. 16%. Okay, and how's Chinese language doing? The same report says in 2021, the enrollment was down 14% nationwide. And if you look back further, back to 2009, the drop was steeper at 24%, which is 15,000 fewer students taking Chinese in college compared to before. So it's not really encouraging, but I think we should not be discouraged by these numbers. There are so many reasons contributing to, the numbers. I think what we need to do is think about our classes, our school, our district, our university, what we can do to promote foreign language learning, make people, different stakeholders, realize the value of taking foreign language classes, as Jingfang just said, right? There's so much value to this. We need to help people see the instrumentality value, intrinsic value of taking language classes.
That is so true, even though it's kind of disheartening, But here's hopefully we'll see some, light at the end of the tunnel. That is in the sense of AI has moved leaps and bounds daily, okay? And so it really, one thing that COVID did, I think it's beneficial for the world, is bring everybody up to the technology world now, On the other hand, language education or education in general has stayed pretty much in the 20th century. And we're still using the 20th century model of schools and also education mindset and thinking about language education in particular. It's really seed time approach. Still, we're doing the Carnegie units and this and that. So what are some innovative ways now the field of K-12 and higher ed have been starting to pay attention and do something about it? And one thing is the seal, state seal and district seal of biliteracy and global seal of biliteracy. But there's a lot of confusion. And some people, when I talk to them and they say, oh, I didn't know that seal biliteracy or global seal biliteracy is applicable for higher ed, or whatever the other way around. So explain to us what are the seal of biliteracy programs and how do students get the seal and how do they work?
So that is my work for over the last decade, answering that exact question. So the State Seal of Biliteracy program, how many of you are somewhat familiar with that? So maybe about half. Began here actually in California in 2011 as a grassroots sort of district by district effort to recognize students who were bilingual, especially those that were in the Hispanic community, as a way to recognize their identity and to help them stay in school long enough to graduate. Well, that worked. And I read about that exact, a year later, I read about this program and thought, as a language teacher at the high school and university level, this is the answer. Because I had students who were maybe heritage learners who didn't try very hard. I had students who only took the minimum amount of language so that they could just check it off for university enrollment, but not for language learning purposes. And I had students who were really great, but did just what they had to do to get an A and no more. And I saw this as an incentive that could change that. And in 2014, I wrote an article for Education Weekly about the Seal of Biliteracy as a game changer. And it is still that. So what we see when a school adopts a program to recognize learners as an exit award or honor or recognition, that within 2 years it generally doubles their enrollment. It increases the number of students who are performing at a higher level. It increases the desire of heritage learners to be recognized. And in focus groups, the students tell us because they don't see the grade or transcript being important for their future. They connect a certificate or a credential, a seal of biliteracy, with the career and their next steps. They see employers wanting to recognize that more than a grade they took in a course. And so with that, I started working with the state seals of biliteracy. There are all 50 states have some program to recognize students with bilingual skills. Each state, it's amazing, yes. And the last state, it was South Dakota in January of this year. So it took 10 years to get there. But each program is different. And so most of those programs are going to recognize a student through testing their senior year of high school. But many of you are teaching in programs that were working with younger students, or you're in a university program, and what's for them. And so I started, as I worked and advocated with states to adopt a state seal program. My state of Illinois, I'm from the Chicago area, we were state number 3. And so I've been working on that. And we realized there were gaps in opportunity. So younger students who finished maybe a dual language immersion program or a heritage Saturday language program would drop out at 8th grade and not get any kind of high school transcript recognition for a language they were very good at. There were also no pathways or articulation to get them university credit for their next steps at the university level. There were students who had languages that weren't taught in their schools, so they couldn't get a seal of biliteracy in their school. There are states where only public schools can participate, so private schools are completely left out. And finally, there's all of those university students that need it for a job or for advanced pay or to open doors, and they had no way to document or certify their languages. So these gaps led to the development of the program I work with now and have done now this is my 6th year, called the Global Seal of Biliteracy. Similar to the state seal, but independent and separate. We have one set of rules, so it's not different in each state. It's the same in every country, and we're currently now in 45 countries. And that serves to recognize students at 3 different levels. Remember, we want them to sustain and lengthen their sequence. So we want them to earn this level of certificate for Global Seal, and then the next level and the next level. And we want them to be able to use that seal for university credit and for their job applications to put on their CV and teacher licensure and more.
That's really incredible. And so similarly, later we can talk about different levels of seals. But by the same token, I want to extend this conversation about different levels to Linda, to Jingfang, in the sense of during our dinner, or actually our planning meeting, you mentioned that your work with the industry is actually differentiated by groups of people. I think that was really fascinating because I never thought about workforce and the needs of the companies are really so nuanced and differentiated. We don't know. We don't think about that. So can you talk a little bit about how you work with different groups and what their needs are? I think this group of audience will be very interested.
Yeah, sure. So from a company standpoint, we look at our population primarily in 3 categories, and this is a bit our jargon. But if you talk to any company, if they are global, sizable, they look at graduate, interns, graduate, early career as one category. So they could be in early 20s to 30s, early 30s. And then the second category will be manager training. So these are team leaders who not only responsible for their own results, but also their team's outcome. And then the third category is executive development. These are senior leaders who might be leading global teams that probably are responsible for market expansion in China or elsewhere, or have offshore operations that they need to, or business partnership that they need to maintain. So the language needs in our context is kind of different. From the first category, actually, language learning is one of the most popular requests for early professional category. So we offer in the companies I worked for, I've advocated for tuition reimbursement for younger professionals who want to have job swap in Asia Pacific countries or in European countries. They are happy to take a pay cut as long as I can go there, work for 6 months. And we encourage them to, acquire some language through their own time investment, of course, but we offer some tuition support. So that's very popular, huge engagement. And then in the second category, in manager training, we focus on how managers can use language to connect emotionally, to help with creativity and innovation, especially in technology companies where the global team need to come together for hackathon or for idea generation. It is very popular to work with the China team, for example, to facilitate those kind of exchange. And we've used the language to help native speakers be more comfortable and to also help some culture building within the global team. In the third category, my first job, kind of part-time job when I was pursuing my MBA at London Business School, was actually a cross-cultural trainer. That's how I kind of funded my MBA education. So, back in the day, it's a must for any expatriate if you are allocated to China to learn Chinese. Today, less so, but I still believe that language is a great way, right, to understand the culture, to really build 关系 relationships. So I still advocate for any executive who have that responsibility to learn the language as a way to really appreciate how they navigate the business and relationship side of the operations. So that's just maybe like some small examples how we think about different audience.
That is really wonderful because it really helps us expand the language education landscape even more, because we kind of treat languages as one humongous thing, and there's a body of language, and you learn 300个汉字 900个句型 whatever, and then you master Chinese, right? So now we really are differentiating the kind of Chinese we're talking about, the kind of intercultural competency we're talking about. So actually, Zhongqi, here's a business proposition. And I think if Columbia would offer that, your enrollment will go up tremendously, is that to offer various types of language for special purposes, or even the notion of micro-credentialing. So later, Linda, you can talk a little bit more about micro-credentialing, but let's create some jobs for Zhongqi first. So, Zhongqi, at Columbia or university in general, what are the possibilities? And let's use our imagination and think about, and there might be some efforts already, but, go ahead, take it over.
First of all, I think we can co-teach a course at Columbia. I think we don't need to worry about the enrollments, and we can make. Yeah.
So true.
Yeah. Right. To answer that question, I think we should probably take a step back, look at our students, because our students are really changing. They are so different from 10 years ago, 20 years ago. And then one trend that we are noticing is that they are becoming increasingly focused on career path when they consider their majors or course selections. Okay, so as you mentioned, there are some efforts already that are being made at university level. Okay? I'm representing a lot of, as CLTA, I represent a lot of college instructors, and they told me they are making changes to meet the changing needs of students. For example, some universities are adding those kind of career-oriented elements to the curriculum, such as internship program, professor development workshops, and some schools are teaming up with businesses to create like a real-life work experience to students. I think those are really helpful to make students see the value of taking the course, spend time in the classroom, working on the exams, right? They need, as you mentioned, they need a goal, right, to aim for, not just the grades, right? Yeah. But I think there more work to be done in terms of collaboration between universities, schools, corporations, companies. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. So that's a good segue to Linda, in the sense of there are two questions in one, in the sense of number one is, how have university been using the Global Seal of Biliteracy to attract more students and grow their program? So that's one question. And the other question is that at one point, you mentioned some universities actually have pair up with the Global Seal and create some kind of micro-credentialing programs. So you can talk about that, and then we'll explore more strategies.
So all of you are working probably in proximity to a university that could potentially attract your students. And so speaking from the advocacy role, get to know those programs and those individuals. Because what really does work is to provide the pathway to think long-term. Where will these students are when they start in preschool? Where do they go next as they're going into high school programs and then into the workspace? And when you look at universities, you heard the statistics from the MLA report. And universities are concerned about that. So they are adding language for specific purposes or trying to look at some alternate things that they can do. One of the other pieces is that in 2025, so the next year's enrollment, the number of freshmen that are eligible to go to the university level, that demographic age group is smaller because of 2007-8 when there was a lower birth rate. So they have lots of things they're worried about. So when I started thinking about a solution, they want students, and you are creating language students, and we need language educators. So we don't need students who are starting Chinese in their freshman year. We need students who have Chinese who can really develop it to a higher level in an academic university setting that could then fill our classrooms. And so how do we solve the problem? Well, the two sides weren't really talking to each other. And so for the Global Seal, what we started to do was to articulate that information to the universities that we work with. I mentioned that we have no age levels or grade level requirements. So we are already working with over 100 universities to provide Global Seal of Biliteracy certificates to their students. So they're already a little familiar with our program. And so it's easier for us to say, we have students. In the last state Seal of Biliteracy report, now that's, remember, for those individual states that have a program, and that was in 2020, there were over 100,000 students with a state Seal of Biliteracy, and we don't know where any of them went next with those language skills. So the Global Seal, we've been really proactive. We have, just this last month, we did about 3,000 certificates. And so we're really talking to our university partners. So who was in Texas? Someone mentioned. Yeah, Texas. So you're at Austin, right? So we've been working with the University of Texas a little at Austin and Arlington. So for example, Dallas ISD, there's high school district there. We certified about 800 of their students last year. So we went to the University of Texas at Arlington and said, what will you give 800 students if they enroll in your program? And they said 14 hours of university credit. And it's a small fee, like $25 fee. And with it, if they enroll in the next course in the sequence, this is what we want to lengthen the sequence of learning. And within 1 year, they will have their minor. So in 1 year, they can have a minor in Chinese after finishing their high school Global Seal of Biliteracy and taking 1 year at the University of Texas. So this is the kind of program that happens with articulation when you get in the room with your next steps. And the universities are really excited about this piece. So pathways start, the problem with whether it's a state seal of biliteracy or a global seal is that students can't wait till the last minute to find out if they have arrived at the level or not. So it's very important when you have lower level programs in middle school or in elementary school that you begin to use measurements, that you create benchmarks so that the students, and give the students feedback so they know that they're on target to reaching those goals and getting that university placement or the scholarship. And so one of the things Global Seal is trying to do to create that is not just the conversation with the university level, but to offer pathway ribbon awards to students who are showing that they are on their way and meeting those benchmark pathways. So articulation is a long-term process. So it can begin in your primary school programs, it can go into high school programs, certainly university, because where do we want them to end up? We want them to end up in a career space or in their life using that language that you taught them on a regular basis. And if we drop them off with no place to go next, or we lose track of them, then some of what our work has done has not been very effective.
So can you briefly talk about, the 3 levels of seal?
So one of the things, and I really like what my colleague here shared about the 3 different groups at the workplace, is because a lot of times students or anyone in the world, when you find out that someone is bilingual, they ask you, are you fluent? And that means a lot of things to different people. Some people, if I can get by, then I'm fluent. As a language educator, I know all of the things I don't know, and I might be less hesitant to say that. And so fluency has levels, and in the language space, we call it proficiency. And we have an ACTFL scale, or we have a CEFR, Council of Europe, the Framework of Reference scale, that measures those levels of proficiency. But in the workplace, they have no idea what those are. So what we chose to do with the Global Seal is to provide 3 levels of certification. We have functional fluency, which means I can survive, but I will make a lot of mistakes, right? But there are tasks someone at the functional fluency or intermediate mid or B1 level can do. They're able to handle regular tasks. They could help someone fill out forms. They can provide simple directions. And that's something that works in a workplace. They have enough social skills to collaborate for a Hackfest or whatever. The next level is working fluency. So this is someone who has a lot more responsibility and is using their language in unexpected situations, that advanced low or B2 level of language. And that's where we certify teachers. So in my state of Illinois, the Global Seal is a proxy for language testing for teacher certification. And that's for companies, that may be exactly what they need. But we also have a higher level. We want them to continue, and we want our educators to continue their language, and that is at professional fluency. And so we wanted to help people understand that all language learning is useful. It's just used for different things. If I'm a tourist, I can get by with functional fluency, and I could have a great vacation and make some new friends. But if I want to have more responsibility and be in that middle management or executive space where I'm representing my company, then I may be motivated to have a higher level of skill.
All right, so let me turn this to Zhongqi from the higher ed perspective, and now listening to the 3 levels of proficiency and the possibility of getting your students to be awarded with the Global Seal. Do you see the connection? Do you feel that there might be some work to be done that's really beneficial for the learners and the university?
Yeah. Of course, certainly I can see the importance of having this seal, right? To apply to connect it to the classes, the courses. I think I personally interested in knowing more about this seal, and I'm sure my students will be interested in knowing the tests, how to be assessed, right? How to get the seal, because that's a realistic goal for them. They spend time in the class. They want to get the certified, right? We want to help them succeed. We also want to help them get the seal. So I think one of the important issues would be how to see the alignment between the academic standards and industry needs, and also the seal, how the seal plays a role in the process, right?
So one of the pieces that really is important is students do say, I want the certificate. Micro-credentialing is more and more popular in university spaces because employers want to know not just what courses a student took, but what skills they actually have. And so for students, they like that certificate because it is the evidence of their skill set that they've been able to prove through testing. And it was important for us for the Global Seal to create ways that that certificate could be shared, so it's digitally shareable. So employers could compare their certificate with someone who has a different level potentially, that it is verifiable. So they can contact the Global Seal and they can verify, yes, this is the person. So all of those kinds of security pieces, interestingly, one of the studies is from LinkedIn and Babbel. Some of you have heard of Babbel, the company that does languages. And they did a survey in the UK and found that the #1 thing that people lied about on their CV and their LinkedIn profile was their language skill, because it's self-identified. So employers can't rely upon that. So one of the things that we did with the Global Seal is each one is serial numbered and can be added then to LinkedIn profiles, but not as something you self-identify. It actually goes under licenses and certifications because of that unique serial number. So part of our responsibility isn't just to get students to the point where they can take a test, and it is a proficiency-based test. It's not grammar or vocabulary. They actually have to produce the language across all 4 language skills or domains: speaking, listening, reading, and writing. So it is a seal of biliteracy, not just bilingualism. But also we had to figure out, what can we do that gives the certificate value after the applause? How do they use it for their next steps? How can they share it? How can they, articulate it with an employer? And what we found was when you have a certificate, not a transcript or a grade or even a test score, because most employers don't understand the test scores either, but when you say, oh, I have a certificate of biliteracy, a seal of biliteracy, and it represents this level in this language, and we provided a definition of what that level can do in workplace terms. Now the student can just say, here's my certificate. And the document speaks for itself. It helps the student articulate their level of skill.
This is really very exciting. Personally, I think this is really tangible as well. So from your perspective, from the industry, listening to the notion about the Global Seal of Biliteracy and the micro-credentialing badges or, validation or whatever, do you think industry will embrace it? And
Yeah,
how can
absolutely.
we make it happen?
Absolutely. But I'm just only one person here,
of
right? So I feel like, oh wow, I learned so much from Linda and from Zhongqi, but not my peers. And in most companies, they didn't have the bandwidth or expertise to even understand the proficiency level, what this translate to, what the candidate can actually do on the job. And to be honest, when a company is hiring, they're very industry and job specific, right? So say proficiency level 2, does that mean the person can negotiate a contract in Chinese? Does that mean the person can provide customer service support in technology? I have no idea. So that's very hard. That means I need additional assessment. I need maybe additional training to bridge the gap. And, you know, it's just hard to kind of bridge the gap sometimes. And the second challenge, as you know, my personal experience also testify, is the time difference. It's harder to synchronize the time of certification and the time of hire or usage. Right? We all know people who 20 years ago speak some kind of Spanish, and now it's like, it's rusty. I learned English in the 90s in Shanghai through English Corner. When I first went to Singapore on my first project, I was actually dismissed by my client because my accent. So it took decades of practice, immersion, living in here, that my English got to where it is today. But, you know, for most employer, they don't have the time to support that kind of lifelong learning. So it's at the time of hire, how can I find people to do the job I want, which requires broader skill sets like communication skills, cultural awareness, like context, perspective, like it's just very hard. So that might be that puts some, I think, unfairness on people who are learning Chinese as second language, including my daughter, because when you are native, okay, I know what that means, but when you are learning, then it's like, you know, you could be anywhere on the spectrum. And how do we help educating, right, employers and help people who have the passion and dedication to learn Chinese to actually have employment opportunities?
So it is challenging. And because we said we recognize that there's a sort of discipline or industry specific knowledge and skills. And those are different languages, so just like math, right? That's a different language, or medical language and so forth. But at least can we possibly think about, we can package the sort of the 预备包, right? You know, the kit, you know, the package of the basic skills, and at least have the functional levels of language. And then it's on-the-job training and lifelong learning. That is absolutely true, because you can't possibly, you know, then you don't need to work. That's where the professional student term comes in, right? Somebody's always lifelong learning student and not working. But we want workers to become lifelong students, lifelong learners, right? So how do we even think about, and I do think that the notion of combining the Global Seal, and Zhongqi actually mentioned minor and major. And maybe at the university, is minor sort of an entry point that we can actually build it up. And that kind of combined with the notion of micro-credentialing, you know, badges, and I think that might be very helpful.
Minor and the majors, to be honest, I think it's even more complicated in different universities.
Yeah.
Right? Different schools have vastly different policies regarding whether that's major, what's the major requirements, what's the minor requirements. You need to reach out to them one-on-one. You need examples to show, oh, this works. So in my other school might follow the suit. What's when Jingfang talk about the learning on the job, requirements on the job, that reminded me of another approach that might be interesting to explore. So if there's some professionals, new entry-level professionals are required to reach certain level of proficiency in one or other languages, I mean, schools can do this kind of training. They can create mini lessons or mini units specifically targeting those students. After they complete that unit or module, they can get like a mini credentialing, right? Yeah, I think that's what the role they can play.
Yeah, we see that happening in certain universities. For example, the University of Hawaii is doing that piece where they have students who have a basic general knowledge of a language that are going into a certain kind of workspace, and then they are providing a certificate. You know, they come out with their general Global Seal of Biliteracy, and then they're taking those students and using that as a qualifier for more specific language in medicine and trade and shipping and some other career spaces there. But the language for specific purposes, that's another space. We have universities that are using that, where we have students who have some other passion. They don't want to be a language major. They want to be a doctor. They want to be a business person, or they want to be a professional, you know, athlete or sports trainer or something, but they have language skills that can be used alongside of those careers to expand opportunity and open doors. And so that's a wonderful space for a university to create cross-curricular, cross-campus, collaborations. And universities are finding that another way to grow their language programs is by being able to invite someone for a 1 or 2 course sequence to get a certificate that already has those heritage language skills perhaps, or language skills that they acquired through some other means, whether it was high school or a heritage language program. So that's another kind of space. And we also see, for example, the University of Iowa and others are opening their college testing centers to test individuals in those communities that have language skills that could add that to their current working situation. Or in some career spaces, there's language pay differentials where they are paid more because they work in social services or in medicine or law enforcement. And that's another opportunity for universities to attract individuals and get them on their campuses.
This is a great idea. And to this point, so far we've been talking about, global seal of biliteracy or seal of biliteracy in general as a way to recognize the students' learning outcome. That would be a very good incentive. We also talk about the, sort of collaborating and really have more conversation of cross-field, talk about language needs from the demand side and also from the supply side. And we also talk about the possibilities of creating some kind of a micro-credentialing or certifying program and all those things. So it's really very promising and exciting for that matter. We only have 7 minutes left. Therefore, I would like to invite each one of you, give us maybe your thoughts on what would be very fruitful next steps, or any resources that you can offer, or maybe how can we continue our conversation? We start with Jingfang.
Yeah, I would love to collaborate with both of you, and the more the better, to continue this dialogue and really the collaboration across our parties, right? The more we can be purposeful, the more we can have a compelling go-to-market for employer and for students. I think more people will understand the business value of language education.
Yeah, I think collaborations are really important across different fields, right? Higher ed, different certification programs. I also think we need to encourage every language teacher to speak to our student, better understand their needs. what they are looking for from the course, from the badge, from the certificate. That's not end goal. It's only a mark, right? And then we can think outside the box, not just looking at the words, grammar from the textbook. Think about the real life experience, because that is a strong motivator for them learning the language, right?
Well, I would say, since most of you are educators, that you should start with incorporating a Seal of Biliteracy program into your own language programs. The globalseal.com, our website hosts information about your individual state seals, if you're interested in doing that. We think it's really important because it's the first time government says that multilingualism is an asset, so we want to support those programs. We also offer for resources. So we have free student self-assessments if students are nervous about taking the test because they don't know maybe where they are, and they're using emojis and can-do statements. So they're very easy for students to take. They're very short, but they're computer adaptive, and it gives them an idea where they actually are very quickly. We also have free downloadable language passport programs. So if you're using you have younger learners and you're providing some sort of formative feedback and assessment with benchmarking, that the students can mark their passport where they are in each skill, listening, reading. Very few students are at the same skill level in each of those skills. And they will discover they have strengths and weaknesses. But as clever teachers, you can use that for gamification, because then they're going to want to take the next course. And that's what we've seen. We've seen students say, well, I want to know what I got because I want to level up. I'm almost to the next level of the ribbon or the certificate. In fact, one of the University of Oregon students said, finally, a test that means something. So what we think about is giving those students some, if you provide student feedback, then you give students agency, and if you give their parents feedback, then you have real power, and it grows your programs. And we have the research to show that it does.
That is so true. And we have 5 minutes left, so we can take a couple questions, because I know that actually there are a lot of preschool programs. It would be really nice, and I serve on the board of Global Seal, and we've been talking about have juniors and younger kids, because I know that my daughters are so excited that her daughter was tested at fourth grader immersion school, and tested at an intermediate low level. And she told me, it's intermediate low. I have no idea what that means. But if they could have some kind of seal, that would be wonderful, right? So anyway, we open up for any questions or comments or suggestions. Anybody? Yes.
This is a few years back when I used to work in another district. When I used to work in another district where I have began to apply for the Global Seal, but at the moment, because the district is going through the state seal, so is there a conflict, or how does that work?
There's no conflict. We have a lot of school districts that use both programs for various reasons. One, the same test can be used and the score can be submitted to both programs. But for example, in my state of Illinois, I mentioned that each state is different. In my state of Illinois, the level for our state seal is intermediate high, which if a student begins Chinese as a freshman is not really doable for them in 4 years. And so the Global Seal starts at intermediate mid. So we have school districts that use the Global Seal so they can be more inclusive of the students learning character-based languages that have had a later start. But we also have students here in California. We have a number of school districts that students are in immersion programs or dual language or heritage programs, and their state seal is at intermediate mid, and they're at advanced low. And they want to be recognized where they are, not where they were. So that's very common. Our program is completely free, and we provide the certificates and embossed seals and shipping at no cost. So once you take the test for your state seal, it can be used also for the global seal.
Because we were using like the 3 requirements where there's like a bound assessment one and then teacher recommendation and reform.
So each state has its own unique rules, and Global Seal does not have some of those rules. And our grade levels start younger, so middle school students can also earn a Global Seal.
Yeah, the regular state or district, it's limited to their state or public schools and so forth. And Global Seal is really much more inclusive for that matter. So anyway, I think our conversation today was very, very rich and informative. And thank you for paying so much attention to what we're saying. And hopefully you'll come join us. And actually, Professor Shi has a SIG, right?
At CLTA, which is the largest Chinese language teacher association, we have 13 special interest groups for our members. So whatever you are interested in, you find a community. I think at this time, it's really important to have a community to work with people sharing the same interest and goals. So welcome to join us.
Thank you. And please join me to thank Linda Cai.